I never meant for any of it to happen. But it started the night Adrian texted me, asking if he could crash at our place for a few days. Just till Sunday, he wrote. Promise I won't be a pain. I didn't even ask Logan, my boyfriend. I just replied, of course. Mi casa, su casa. Adrian was 19, carefree, and wild in the way that made me feel like I was 19 again too, before bills, before loyalty meant more than just a word. He showed up with a duffel bag and that familiar grin that always hinted at trouble. Tall, lean, with messy brown curls and a pierced eyebrow that gleamed under the porch light, Adrian walked in like he owned the place. Damn, this house is even nicer than your photos, he said, dropping his bag and immediately kicking off his sneakers. Logan home? He's working late, I said, closing the door behind him. Perfect, Adrian smirked. More time for you to show me around. Just the bedrooms, though. That's where the magic happens, right? I rolled my eyes but felt the heat rise in my chest. Adrian had always flirted. He flirted with everyone. But something about the way his eyes lingered on me now, it didn't feel so harmless. Still, I laughed it off and led him through the house. He commented on everything, the size of the living room, the kitchen island, the wine rack we never used. But it was in the guest room where he paused, leaned back on the bed, arms behind his head. You and Logan still good? He asked, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Yeah, I said. But it came out too fast. Too forced. He looked over. Just asking. You used to talk about him like he was a god. I smiled, not really meaning it. He's just busy. We're both busy. It's life. Adrian nodded slowly. Life's a bitch when you let it get in the way of love. That night, over pizza and beer, the three of us sat on the couch like old times. Adrian told stories about college guys with too much ego and too little experience. Logan chuckled politely but barely looked up from his phone. When he excused himself for a Zoom call with his boss at 9 p.m., Adrian glanced at me and whispered, "He always this fun at night?" I gave him a look. "Behave." He raised both hands. "I'm an angel. Just a bored one." When Logan finally went to bed, Adrian stayed up. We sat in the dim light of the TV, half watching some dumb reality show. Adrian sat close enough that I could smell the faint cologne on his hoodie, mixed with something warmer, skin maybe. "You ever think about how weird it is?" he said suddenly. "How people just settle? Like, they find someone who's fine and stop looking for electricity." I didn't answer. He turned to face me fully. "You were always the one I looked up to, you know? Hot, confident, all your shit together. The boyfriend. The job. You were untouchable." I swallowed hard, eyes still on the screen. "And now?" Adrian smirked. "Now you're just a guy sitting too close to temptation." I laughed, maybe too loud, and stood up. "I'm going to bed." He looked up at me, eyes steady. "Good night, Julian." I paused. It had been years since someone said my name like that, with weight, with meaning. "Night," I said, turning off the light. The next morning, I came into the kitchen to find Adrian shirtless, wearing nothing but gray sweatpants that clung in ways sweatpants shouldn't. He stood barefoot at the counter, pouring coffee like he owned the damn house. "Morning, sunshine," he said, glancing over his shoulder. I grabbed a mug. "You always this comfortable when you stay over?" He grinned. "Only when I feel safe." Logan came in a moment later, already in work mode, collared shirt, Bluetooth in his ear, briefcase in hand. "Morning," he muttered, grabbing a protein bar and kissing my cheek without looking at me. "Gotta run." "Love you." "Love you too," I said automatically. When the front door shut, Adrian looked at me over the rim of his mug. That seemed romantic. I ignored him, opened the fridge, and stared into it like it held answers. "You know," Adrian said, sipping slowly, "sometimes it's not about what you say you love. It's about what your body won't stop reacting to." I looked at him. He didn't look away. There was a hum between us. Silent but unmistakable. Dangerous. And I knew, even then, that the line was already blurred. By the third day, Adrian had made himself at home in every way that mattered. His duffel bag spilled open in the guest room, his hoodie hung over the back of the dining chair, and his energy, magnetic, flirtatious, unpredictable, had seeped into the walls like cologne that wouldn't fade. I kept telling myself I was overreacting. It was just Adrian. He was always this playful, always this confident. I'd seen him flirt with bartenders, straight guys, Uber drivers. He was the kind of guy who made people blush just by looking at them a second too long. But now all of it was directed at me. And I wasn't blushing, I was burning. That morning, Logan had already left for work when I stepped out of the shower. Towel around my waist, I opened the bathroom door and froze. Adrian was standing in the hallway, shirtless, sipping from a bottle of water. His eyes dropped to the towel, then climbed up again. "Didn't know you were in there," he said, his voice calm, but his gaze too curious to be innocent. I tightened the towel. "You could knock." He smiled. "But then I'd miss views like this." I brushed past him, chest tight, and shut the bedroom door behind me. I could still hear him chuckle through the wood. The line wasn't blurred anymore, it was cracking. That evening, Logan texted saying he had to stay late for a team meeting. I stared at the message longer than I should have, phone resting in my palm like a weight. Adrian appeared beside me, stretching, arms above his head. The hem of his t-shirt lifted, exposing the ridges of his stomach. "Trouble in paradise?" he asked, leaning against the kitchen counter. "He's just working." Adrian tilted his head. "You always defend him." I turned to him. "Because he's mine." His lips curled, playful, unapologetic. "Is he?" I didn't answer. He stepped closer. "You don't have to pretend with me, Julian. I see you. I see how you breathe different when he's around. How your eyes avoid his." I moved away, grabbing a glass from the cabinet. "You're reading into things." "No, I'm just not blind," he said, voice lower now. "You don't smile when you say his name. But you flinch when I say yours." That made me freeze. He was right. And I hated that he was right. We ended up on the couch again, a movie playing but barely watched. Adrian sat close, so close I could feel the heat radiating off his thigh. His hand rested on the cushion between us, fingers grazing mine every few minutes like he wanted me to forget it was happening. I didn't forget. I memorized it. "You remember that night back in high school?" he asked suddenly. "After your graduation party?" I nodded. "You got wasted and puked in my dad's bushes." He laughed. "Not that part. The part where you kissed me." My stomach dropped. "I was drunk," I said. "So was I. But we both meant it." His eyes were locked on me now, unwavering. "I never forgot that kiss." I swallowed. "It was a long time ago. You ever think about doing it again?" His hand was on my thigh now. Not teasing. Not accidental. "Adrian. I'm not asking for forever," he whispered. "I just want a moment. A real one. One where you don't have to pretend you're happy." My pulse thundered in my ears. I stared at the screen, but I couldn't see anything. "I have a boyfriend." "You have a routine," Adrian said softly. "There's a difference." I stood up, heart pounding. "I need air." Adrian stood too. "Then let's go for a walk. Or run. Or anything that gets me alone with you longer." I faced him. "Why are you doing this?" He stepped closer. "Because you want me to." He was inches away now. His breath, warm and sharp, kissed my jaw as he leaned in, not for a kiss, but just close enough that I had to feel it. The gravity between us was unbearable. "Say the word," he whispered, "and I'll stop." My hand clenched at my side. My body screamed yes. My conscience screamed no. I didn't say a thing. He pulled back slowly, studying my face. "You're already falling, Jules. You just haven't hit the ground yet." He turned and walked toward the hallway. "I'm going to bed." I didn't follow. I couldn't. Instead, I stood there, in the flickering light of the TV, haunted by the weight of a kiss that hadn't even happened yet. But God, it was close. The night it happened, the rain came down hard, steady, rhythmic, the kind that makes everything feel heavier. Logan had texted an hour before. Stuck late again. Don't wait up. No kiss emoji. No I love you. Just words, cold and mechanical. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over a reply that never came. Adrian walked into the living room, barefoot, wearing nothing but sweatpants and a tank top. His curls were messy from the shower, droplets still clinging to his collarbone. He didn't say anything. Just looked at me. Something was different. There was no smirk tonight. No teasing grin. Just quiet intention. You okay? He asked. No. Want to talk about it? No. He stepped closer. Want to do something about it? My eyes lifted to his. They were steady, dark, daring. I shouldn't, I said, even as my body betrayed every syllable. But you want to, he replied and placed his hand, slowly, deliberately, on my chest. I didn't move. I couldn't. He leaned in. You don't have to lie, Jules. Not to me. His lips brushed mine. Not a kiss, not quite, but a provocation. My breath caught. The room tilted. Then I kissed him. Hard. It wasn't careful. It wasn't gentle. It was years of restraint breaking in one reckless second. I pulled him close, our bodies colliding like magnets that had been denied each other too long. His hands were on my face, my shoulders, my back, hungry, urgent, alive. We stumbled backward, crashing into the couch. My shirt was gone before I even realized I'd taken it off. Adrian's mouth moved like it had been there before, like it remembered me. There were no promises. No words. Just skin. Just the sound of breathing that refused to slow. He climbed onto my lap, straddling me, eyes locked on mine as if to ask, "Are you sure?" And I answered with another kiss, deeper, hotter, raw. When I finally paused, chest heaving, I whispered, "This is a mistake." Adrian didn't flinch. Then make it again. He kissed me harder, and I let him. Somewhere between moans and muffled gasps, I heard a sound, a distant vibration. My phone, buzzing against the floor. I ignored it. But Adrian didn't. He pulled back, chest rising and falling, sweat slick along his temple. "Logan?" he asked, voice hoarse. I nodded, silent. Adrian stood, slowly, pulling his tank top back down. "You should answer." I didn't move. He looked at me, really looked. "You can't keep pretending this is just about me. You're already gone, Jules. You just haven't told him yet." He walked toward the hallway, then stopped. "I meant it when I said I see you. You deserve to be seen." And then he was gone. Into the guest room. The door clicked shut. I sat there, shirtless, breathless, ruined. I picked up my phone. Logan had called. Twice. A text followed. "Everything okay at home?" I stared at the message until the screen went dark. The guilt hit me in waves, sharp, nauseating, uncontrollable. I sat in the shower long after the water turned cold, trying to scrub the night off my skin. But nothing washed it away. Not the soap. Not the silence. When I walked into the kitchen the next morning, Adrian was already dressed. Jeans, hoodie, duffel by the door. "You're leaving?" I asked, voice cracking. He looked at me with something that wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was clarity. "I shouldn't be here anymore." "Adrian." He shook his head. "Don't. Last night meant something to me. But I won't be your secret." I stepped closer. "It wasn't just a mistake. I know that now." "I know you do," he said softly. "But knowing isn't enough." He leaned in and kissed my cheek. Gentle this time, almost tender. "Goodbye, Jules." And just like that, he walked out. The door closed. And for the first time in a long time, the house felt cold. I turned and saw Logan's mug still on the counter. Still where he left it. Still part of a life that suddenly felt too small, too still. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stood there, in the quiet echo of betrayal, and wondered how long I could pretend nothing had changed, when everything had. 2 days passed before I told Logan the truth. Not everything. Not the weight of Adrian's lips or the heat of his skin. Not the way my body leaned into the betrayal like it had been craving it for years. But I told him enough. That something had happened. That it meant something. That I couldn't lie anymore. We sat across from each other in the living room, the silence between us 1,000 times louder than any scream. Logan stared at the floor, jaw tight, fingers steepled in front of him. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just asked one question. Was it him? I nodded. Adrian. His eyes closed like he'd just heard the punchline to a cruel joke. I knew it, he said quietly. The way you looked at him. The way you didn't look at me. I didn't try to defend myself. There was no point. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I'm sorry, I said. He looked up, eyes red, not from tears but exhaustion. No, you're not. You're relieved. That landed harder than anything else. Because he was right. Something in me had unclenched. Something I hadn't even known was there. I wasn't proud of what I'd done, but I wasn't trying to bury it anymore. I had wanted it, and now I had to deal with what came next. Logan stood, slow and deliberate. I'll stay at my sister's for a while. You need to figure out what you want. What I want, I said, standing too, is something real. Not routine. Not comfort disguised as love. He flinched and I instantly regretted the words, but I couldn't take them back. I loved you, he said. I still do. But maybe that's not enough for either of us anymore. Then he walked out, just like Adrian had. And I was alone. The days that followed were strange. Still. Quiet in a way that made every creak of the house sound accusatory. I moved through the motions like a ghost. Waking up, showering, eating toast I couldn't taste. Logan didn't call. Adrian didn't text. I didn't reach out to either of them. I wasn't ready to be forgiven. Not yet. But I did start being honest with myself. I stood in front of the mirror one night and looked hard. At my tired eyes. The tension carved into my shoulders. The hollowness behind my forced smiles. And I whispered the words I'd been avoiding. You weren't happy. Not with Logan. Not really. You were loyal. Comfortable. But you were fading. And then came Adrian. Fire wrapped in flesh. A mirror that reflected everything I wanted to feel again. Not just desired, but alive. Maybe it had started with lust. But the ache it left behind, that was something deeper. A week later, I found Adrian again. I showed up at his dorm unannounced, heart pounding like I was 19 too. He opened the door and just stared. Jules. I nodded. I came to talk. He didn't move. You sure that's a good idea? No, I said. But I've had enough of good ideas that kept me miserable. He let me in. The room was messy. Textbooks open, a half-eaten slice of pizza on the desk. His bed unmade. Lived in chaos. I stood there for a second, unsure. Then I said it. I don't know what this is. I don't know what we're supposed to be. But I know you saw me when no one else did. And I've never been able to forget that. He looked at me like he was trying to believe me. I wasn't just a detour, he asked. I stepped closer. You were a wake-up call. He exhaled, long and slow. You broke something, Jules. I know. But maybe I had to feel whole again. Adrian reached out, hesitant, fingers brushing mine. I don't want to be your rebound. You're not, I said. You're the reason I realized I still had a pulse. He pulled me into a slow kiss, soft this time. No urgency. No firestorm. Just truth. Just breath. And I knew, in that moment, something had shifted. This wasn't about guilt anymore. It was about choosing now. Choosing me. Choosing us, maybe. Some betrayals come from weakness. Others from hunger. Mine came from a truth I'd buried too long. But in the ashes of what I broke, something new was beginning. Not perfect. Not clean. But real. And for the first time in years, that was enough.